So, Portugal,
Mm-hmm.
it's our second home.
Yes.
And you were the first one from the family that decided to move, actually stay. You were
Yeah.
like, I'm staying in Portugal. You arrived to Lisbon and you were like, I'm in love and I'm staying and I'm living here forever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for me, Portugal really, I arrived and I felt this inspiration. I remember I wasn't able to write. I write a lot and sing a lot, and I wasn't inspired for 10 years, I think. And then when I arrived here, I remember after 15 days, I had an entire notebook already, like new songs. I had everything. I'm like, whoa, I'm not like letting this go. So I decided to do a complete shift of my life. I had a translation company back in Ecuador, and when I came here, I'm like, okay, I'm just like changing life completely, and I became a tour guide, basically.
Okay, amazing. That's
Uh-huh.
amazing. And okay, when you started to learn about the history of Portugal, because that's like one of the most fascinating things that happen, is like you kind of like discovered like super interesting information that wasn't like the mainstream things
Yeah,
that we
a
hear.
100%, 100%. So when I was training to be a tour guide, I was following the tour guides, listening to what they were saying, comparing notes, reading books, reading history. Like I spent 9 months only studying to be a tour guide, and it was super interesting because like the stories, I was like, some of them I read, and I'm like, okay, how plausible this really is, you know? And then I was like standing in the middle of a plaza with 30 people around me, like listening to me. I was the tour guide, and I was sharing the stories that I have learned. And as I was speaking the words of the traditional history of Portugal, I was like, I don't believe this. Like there's a piece, there's something missing. There is something that is not a full body yes. There's something that is not resonating. And I began having these questions, and Lisbon being Lisbon, I was like, I was having this question, and then suddenly I'm like in a cafe, and I have these two Portuguese old men next to me talking about these other, like the exact question that I had in my head. Like these people were talking about this, and I'm like, okay, and I asked them, and they're like, "Oh, you should read this book. You should go to this library. You should go to da." And suddenly, like Lisbon being Lisbon, as synchronistic as it is, I suddenly found a complete different history of Portugal
Hmm.
that I began including in my tours. And super curiously, as I was like shifting my stories and my tours, suddenly I had a girl that cried in a tour in the middle of the Commerce Plaza. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, at the end of the tour, she was crying, and I was like, okay, what's happening? I was feeling super bad. I'm like, okay,
I
like
made someone cry.
I made someone cry. Like, what is happening? And I like everyone left, and I was like, ask her. I'm like, are you okay? Like, what is happening? And she was like, no, it's just I'm super grateful. Like, these are
Mm.
a gratitude tears because I arrived to Lisbon. She was, I think, for a week in Lisbon, and she was leaving the next day. And she said that she has been feeling these things in Lisbon, and thanks to the story that I was telling, that I was sharing, the information that I was sharing, that she managed to understand that her soul was having a conversation with the city, or that the city was having a conversation with the soul, her soul, and
Mm.
that there was something really, really special. So she was so grateful. And in that moment, I had to really pause and be like, okay, like my tour is not a traditional tour of Lisbon. I have, I'm doing a mystical tour of Lisbon, and I'm
Yeah.
sharing the mystical or occult history of Lisbon and Portugal. And so that's a little bit like my journey with really learning like the history of Portugal, and yeah, the things. Those
That's amazing. Yeah. And one of the things that you talk a lot and that you mention is that you really recognize Portugal as sacred lands,
Yeah, a
right?
hundred
And
percent, 100%.
does that have to do with like how she was feeling about like the stories that you were telling? Like what are the I think like the top parts that you would mention?
So I say that Portugal are sacred lands, and I say this because of what I have felt in me, what I have seen in the people, also what I have, how I've seen Lisbon and Portugal behave with certain people,
Mhm.
and because of the ancestors of these lands. I think that that is like super important. There are, of course, the Templars that are super famous now for being like the ones that actually decided to build an entire country for them. And you have Freddy Silva that talks about this a lot. But in 2016 and 2017, no one was talking about this other story that now is like very, like most people like know about it, da da da. Back then, no one really talked about that. And I would mention not only the Templars, because the Templars were like a really interesting group of people that we're gonna go in for sure in another video, because we don't have time for that right now. It's like it goes too deep, and for sure it's gonna have like a lot of parts. But I would not only mention them and their intention, because they were like very, very alchemical people. You know, they really worked with you know, magic, if we can call alchemy magic. But I would mention the ancestors, like the Lusitanos, for example, or even before, maybe they're the same, we don't really know, the people that actually built the megaliths. You know, like there was a group of people that managed to carry or levitate, we don't know how they built these megalithic structures, and the oldest megaliths in Europe are actually here in Portugal.
Mhm.
You know,
So the oldest megaliths, can you explain the audience what is a megalith?
so megalith, we always go to the root of the word to understand what it means, right? Megalith, big stones. This is what it means. And so this is like structures that have big stones, like Stonehenge, you know?
Mhm.
This is the most known one in the UK. Everyone knows the stone circle, and it is aligned with the solstice, and it's like this is like the most famous one. But
Mhm.
the oldest ones are actually here in Portugal, in the Iberic Peninsula, in the lower parts of Portugal. These are like the oldest. We have the cromlech of Almendres, and we have three different types of structures. So we have the circles, then we have the dolmens, which are like little houses, but they're not really houses. And then we have the menhir, which is like one big stone. So we have like those three different types of structures, and we have all of them. The oldest ones are here in Portugal, and you can see that the civilization that were building this were going like to the north, and then they ended up like in the UK, Ireland, and you have like all of that space, like Scotland, all of that. But yeah,
Amazing.
yeah,
Okay.
and so
And you want to tell us more about the Lusitanos?
so the Lusitanos are very really special people. And I can say this because there is in the facts, like factual history, there is a very famous phrase that the Caesar of Rome said in the first century, when the Roman Empire was expanding their territory, and they arrived to this part of the world, and they were expanding their territory. So they would arrive and conquer, and then they would continue. The Lusitanos were a civilization that were in the north of Portugal, the northern part of Portugal, and they were established there. And when the Romans came, they did such a huge battle to them. They were like really, really strong, and they did such a huge battle that they didn't allow them for them to be conquered. They didn't allow Rome to conquer them. And even Caesar had this saying that said, there is a civilization up in the north that doesn't govern and doesn't allow for us to govern them. And if we really go deep and understanding every single meaning of this phrase, we are understanding that there's a civilization, a group of people that doesn't have a government. They don't govern, and they don't allow for us to govern. So they literally someone arrived and it's like, okay, who is your leader? And they're like, we don't have a leader. And they're like, okay, so who are we going to talk
We
to?
are
It's
going to
like,
be your leaders.
we are exactly, all of them are leaders. Like this is the concept of self-determination. Like they were such an advanced civilization that no one was leading anyone, because everyone was capable enough to guide themselves. And I think that this is one of the crucial civilizations and people and ancestors of this land that we don't talk about enough, and that we should, because they are really ancestors that are showing us the future. You know, because I think that we're really going in that direction, that we don't need gurus or external people that are like telling us what to do. It's like, no, inside of us, our generation, our parents, maybe also, and the younger generations for sure, we're like, we don't need anyone to guide us. We have to connect to our internal guide, and we're gonna know, what's good for us, what's not good, but really work in a community, because obviously this wouldn't work if we wouldn't work together as a collective.
Amazing. And Lusitanos means light, the tribe of the light.
Of the
That's what you
light.
say, right?
It is the tribe of the light for sure, and Lusus actually has several meanings. I would love to do a video only of the meanings of Lusitanus, but
Lusitanos.
Tanus is the pre-Celt term for tribe,
Okay.
and Lusus can mean light, but it also has some other meanings that will lead us more to this concept of giants. It's super interesting. That's why they say that
Okay.
maybe the Lusitanos were the people that were living in the islands of the Azores
Mm.
that were previously Atlantis. This is one of the theories, one of the hypotheses, that when the islands sank, they had to find the closest point on to the islands, to that place of land so that they can arrive. And so that was Portugal. And they were maybe the ones that actually like are the original Atlanteans.
Okay,
Yeah.
super interesting.
Language is
And
always going to bring us back to the original roots. That's why language, if you are questioning something, an origin or something, just follow the language, follow the roots for
yeah,
sure.
and you know that because you are a linguist.
I'm a linguist. Yeah.
Yeah, the science of language.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so if we are kind of like closing the chapter on the history of Portugal or like Portugal in itself, like what would you tell us about like the foundation? Like I know it's like one of the oldest countries. Tell us
Yes.
about the borders, like what happened like in terms of like a more structural organization or legalization of the
Aha.
territory.
Okay, so the territory is actually one of the oldest countries in Europe, and then the oldest is debated between Bulgaria and like some other countries, but definitely like Portugal is within the oldest countries in Europe with their borders not being changed since its constitution. The year of constitution we say 1147 because that's the year where the first king of Portugal arrived to Lisbon and managed to conquer Lisbon, but the Reconquista, they started expelling the Moors. The Christians started expelling the Moors from the north of the Iberic Peninsula way before that. It began in the year 1100s, like maybe a little bit before. But then in the year, so we have a lot of different dates of when we could consider the official constitution of Portugal because there are many things that happened that leads to the creation of a new king and the acceptance of a new king under the Pope being the major authority. So that only happened in 1174, I think it is, or 79, with a Bulla Manifestus Probatum, where the Pope actually agrees and is like, yes, okay, yeah, we have a new king in the land. We have a new kingdom, basically. But for that to happen, like so many other things happened before. Do you want me to share that story?
I think
Do
we
we have
don't
time?
have time. I
Okay.
think we have time. But thank you
Okay.
so much for sharing that. And it's gonna be amazing, like for us to do more videos and that you can explain more about the all the
Yeah.
history that you've learned throughout
Yeah.
these years.
Yeah. I'm
Okay,
super happy to
amazing.
do that. Super.
See you soon.
Ciao.